Hello and welcome to the Beyond the Big Six podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things that aren't the Big Six, as we like to say. Um, I'm Niall Bromley and I'm joined this evening by Anthony Elliott. Anth, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Been a bit of a quiet day. Not well, I've been at work, but less said about that the better.
Yeah, and I see,
How's things?
yeah, good. I see you're sporting a different sport this evening, which is
Yeah,
very interesting.
we've gone with the Whitney Warriors jersey there, the hockey jersey, local hockey team. So representing. And I say you've
Absolutely.
got a nice alternative shirt again. You're really busting them out, yeah.
Yeah, for people who don't know, because not many people do, I do have a shirt collection. Something that I've done for the majority of my life, but I've kind of ramped it up in the later years. This is a Dynamo Dresden shirt, who are one of my favorite German teams. That down to the fact that they're basically a big club with a big stadium who've been in the third division for years and years, and they get 20 odd thousand fans every week. And this is why I always say about Football Manager, they're the perfect football manager club for someone to come in and turn them around. But yeah, that's why I like them. So that's what this is. Reminds us of when Sunderland were in League One in the good old days. Right. Okay. Anyway, let's get this podcast rolling. So it would be daft not to talk about the recent news, which is Nuno Espirito Santo sacked from Nottingham Forest. Not a surprise. I think not results based because of comments that he made in his press conference and such. Before we talk about his replacement, and when that decision was made, what was your initial thoughts? Were you a bit like me and just thought it was a matter of time, or were you a little bit disappointed to see him go?
It was the writing was kind of on the wall, wasn't it? Because any time a manager comes out and is like pointing fingers at different like people, especially the board, there's big questions going to be asked, and you've got to assume that there has been a breakdown in communication there. I know there's been mentioned about Edu coming in, and that's upset the apple cart with Nuno, as well as a bit of a breakdown with the owner. It was almost writing on the wall as soon as he started to say, oh, things aren't so great with me and the owner was like, hang on a minute, like I, I don't know anything about that. So yeah, it almost seemed as though from the start of the beginning of August, I mean, maybe even further back than that, you're kind of looking and thinking, that all's not well. And then obviously that result there a week ago now, that isn't ideal, but it's not enough to get him sacked. But the comments, I think, really, and I mean,
Yeah.
I think he got sacked at sort of like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So yeah, it's an interesting one to release a statement at that sort of time. I don't know where in the world Marinakis is, but maybe that played a factor. Um, but yeah, it is surprising in the respect that he had an outstanding season with Forest last year, but given the comments, no, it's not surprising at all.
Yeah, and do you think with him, this kind of puts him in a emergency break glass sort of box for the rest of the Premier League? Do you think if other teams start to struggle further down the line, do you think that this could be a well, Nuno's still available? Should we just get him in? Do you think he's next on people's lists if things are to fail?
You'd certainly think so. I mean, going off you're only as good as the last job you did, sort of thing. And you've seen that a couple of times in recent years where a manager's come off what wasn't the greatest spell, but they've kind of fell into another job. You could kind of argue Postecoglou's like that, really. He didn't do the greatest in the league for Spurs, but he ended up winning them a European trophy, and then he got sacked. But he's bounced into what is a decent job in Forest. So yeah, the argument could be made that people looking out like other clubs in the league who are struggling might go, oh, actually, he's a good option to pick up.
Yeah, and on Ange Postecoglou, obviously he's the replacement. The second time he's replaced Nuno Espirito Santo in the Premier League. What do you make of the appointment? Because for me personally, when I look at it, I think they've done a complete 180 in terms of how these managers play, which I think is a big risk when the season's already started. Obviously, Nuno, it's very counter-attacking. It's a bit low block. Ange, as we know, is very the opposite. He's very play on the front foot, high intensity. Try the press. How do you think that's gonna work? Because it's a bit of a strange one, and he's in charge against Arsenal. He doesn't have long to put his ideas in place. How do you think that will sort of go?
Well, to me, Postecoglou is very married to one way of playing, so I don't know how that translates to Forest. So I do think it's probably going to be a difficult sort of initial marriage, shall we say. So yeah, I think it's a big shift, like you say. They've almost, like you say, done a 180. How is that going to translate? Is that going to be well received by the Forest dressing room? Is it going to be well received by the supporters? Because I mean, we've seen Spurs on the receiving end of some drubbings last season, and it's one of those when you're married to a style of football and you aren't willing to deviate like what Postecoglou was. Is that going to have a detrimental effect going forward, especially when Nuno played a certain style and that seemed to really work for Forest? So it's interesting to see how it's going to pan out, but I have my worries, I have my concerns.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. And we're going to start our predictions now, and there's no better place to start after that conversation than Awesome Forest. Now, Connor, as you may notice, the podcast host and podcast founder is not with us this evening. He's decided to swan off on holiday to Wales. Just shocking. And leaving, basically hanging me and Ant out to dry. So to do this by ourselves. But we decided that we'll put our big boy pants on, didn't we, Amph? And we'll give it a
Yeah.
go. So so you're just going to get our predictions for now, and Connor's going to come in later with his predictions. So so we'll start with Arsenal Forest. Anth, I'll leave this one to you. How do you think this game will go, and what's your prediction?
So I think it might be a bit of a struggle, like we mentioned there before, because Ange is coming in. I mean, you could always get that new manager bounce, but it's not really as though they've been on a real lack of form. They haven't really had the greatest of starts, but they haven't had the worst. Yes, they got beat off West Ham last time out, but I just feel as though Arsenal are on a bit of an upward trajectory at the minute. They seem to be just in a bit of a groove. Yes, again, they got beat off Liverpool, but I do feel as though Arsenal's going to win this one. So I've got Arsenal to win 2-0. And I don't know. I don't think, and coming in with such a short period of like preparation, it's going to pan out well, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, so I changed my prediction based on the Ange appointment. So I did have 2-0 and I changed it to 2-1. And that sounds ridiculous to Arsenal, of course. But the reason I did that is I just feel like I think he's gonna go in all guns blazing. I think he's gonna want to prove a point. It's against his old sort of enemy in Arsenal. He's never won against Arsenal either. Hasn't got a very good record. So, yeah, I do think he's going to go all guns blazing. I think they might take the lead, but I just think Arsenal's class will prevail in the end. So I've gone for 2-1 to Arsenal in that game. The next game we're going to talk about is Bournemouth against Brighton. Now, bit of a tough one because Brighton had a strange start where they only got 1 point from the first two games, but played quite well. And then last time out, they went and beat Man City and played really well and deserved to win the game, especially second half. Bournemouth lost the first game and then have won the next two. So they've again, two teams who's had a really good start. Two teams which I know you highly rate them both, Anthony, and I, you've got to admire the way the clubs go about their business and the way, not only the way that they play on the field, but the way that they ran upstairs, which is always something that I quite like in football. So it's a really tough one to call. I couldn't quite decide, so I've done the obvious thing and gone for a draw. Because it's just one of those games where it's just so hard to call. It's two attacking teams, two teams that they like the ball as well. They've got players who can really change games. Matoma for Brighton is a phenomenal player, and I'm surprised that he wasn't linked or went or made a transfer in the summer to a big club. Well, it's a big club. That's disrespecting Brighton. A Champions League sort of club, such as Newcastle or Chelsea or someone like that. But yeah, I've gone for 2-2 because I just cannot separate them. I think they're both two very good teams. I think they both got plenty of goals in them. So yeah, I've gone 2-2.
Yeah, I've gone with the same scoreline in actuality. I've much like yourself, I do think they're evenly balanced. Really impressive sides, very well run, and I'm really impressed with how Brighton and Bournemouth have started. Bournemouth, especially given the amount of changes that they've had in the side, it is really quite impressive, and credit to Areola for that. So yeah, I've gone 2-2 as well.
Yeah. So next we're going to talk about your boys' anthem. A very interesting one, this, because just basically based on, who's going to start up front for Newcastle. Will Wissa get thrown straight in? Will Valdemara get put straight in? I don't know what you've gone for, but yeah, I think I'll just double check, but I've got Newcastle to win quite comfortably. Oh no, I haven't. Sorry, I thought I did. I haven't. I've got Newcastle to draw 0-0 based on I don't think Valdemara will be ready, and I'm not sure if he'll start. And Vissa, I'm unsure. I think, is he going to be match ready? I know he did score for Congo in the week, but it's a little bit different when you look at the opposition. So I've gone for 0-0. And what's your take on this game? Obviously, one you're looking forward to. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, so I'm up there on Saturday for the game, so I'm really looking forward to getting back to St James's. Um, it'll be interesting to see how lines up really, because part of us doesn't know whether he'll have like Wissa playing up front and play Voltamara off him, which would be an interesting change to the shape. But I don't think he'll deviate from that 4-3-3, which he's relied on since coming into the club. Yes, he has done it for the odd game, but he is very rigid to that 4-3-3 style. So I would expect probably Wissa to start out of the two, because I think, much like what you say, Voltamara is very much not, well, he's untested in the Premier League, and it would be a bit unfair to kind of just throw him into the deep end. In terms of Wolves, I don't think last season when they came to St James's, they didn't really look like a team until Cunha came on, and I think it's going to be a big struggle for them to come to St James's and get anything. So I've gone for them to get beat 3-0. I think the home support is just going to be too much, and I just think as a footballing side, we've got far too much for Wolves to cope with, and I think they're really struggling at the minute. So I'm hoping to see a few goals, if I'm honest. So we'll see what happens, but I am pretty confident that we'll win on Saturday.
Yeah, to be honest, I put 0-0 based on, like I said, I'm just not sure on Newcastle's on the striker situation. I think if this game was a few games down the line, I would have probably put Newcastle to comfortably win. But since it's just after an international break, obviously you're still missing Anthony Gordon, still suspended. And I just don't know if he's going to throw these two strikers straight in. I think he's got to, because he's not going to play Asula. So I think one of them's going to start, and I just don't know if they're going to be match ready. I know Wissa hasn't played, other than for his country. He hasn't really played in the best part of 3 months. And Voltamata, as you touched on, is untested. So that's the only reason I've gone for a 0-0. I think any other week I would have backed Newcastle to win quite comfortably, but it's just the goal scoring situation is my only problem with it.
Just to add to that, I think the sort of, what's the word, like hoodoo around the club is, since the window's closed, they don't have that added pressure of the window and the saga that's rattled on all season. I'm not going to talk about him. He's like Voldemort. But yeah, I think because we've got like, our squad is it's our squad now, and those lines are like finely drawn, and we can put the summer behind it. I think it gives the squad an opportunity to finally just close that chapter and move on and establish the style and the squad as a whole going forward into the season. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Again, football's very unpredictable. Forms all over the shop at the best of times. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I know it's a very strange one, because Newcastle have obviously had 2 0-0 draws already in the first 3 games, and as I say, I just don't know if them strikers are going to be ready. But I could be wrong. They'll probably both get a brace or something like that. That's normally what happens when I make a prediction. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to the next game, which is Everton against Aston Villa. Now, again, such an interesting one, because Everton have had a really, other than the first game against Leeds, which, in my mind, they were robbed. They've had a really positive start of the season, haven't they? They've got 2 wins, a great away win at Everton. They beat Brighton, who highly rated as well. That they're in their new stadium, which I think is going to give them a lift, and did give them a lift against a very good Brighton team. Yeah, I've gone for them to win the game 2-0. Villa are starting to worry me in a lot of ways. Not, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the bottom half of the table. I still think they'll finish sort of top 8, or minimum top 10. But I don't know. It all seems a bit stale there, and I know we've touched that before. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I've gone with 2-0 to Everton for that game.
Smashing. I think it'll be a tight affair. Obviously, Villa haven't really started the greatest, and Everton have really done really quite well, given the start that they've had. And I know Connor did a bit of a video about teams going into new stadiums in a new season and really struggling, and that they are really kind of debunking that myth. So yeah, I've been really quite impressed with Everton. Unfortunately, I do expect Villa to actually become the side that they actually are, and I've gone for a win. I've gone 2-1 to Villa, because I just think that there has to be a point where they actually get out of the funk that they're in and they get a result. And I do feel as though, unfortunately for Everton fans, it's going to be against them.
Yeah. So yeah, two completely different opinions there. Well, we'll see. That's why we all love football. The next one, Palace against Sunderland. So again, another one which struggle to predict. I've gone for a 2-0 win to Crystal Palace, and the reason I've gone for that, I know they are weaker because I've lost Eze, which is obviously a plus for Sunderland. It's their first game without him. But sorry, they were without him against Aston Villa, weren't the last week. Sorry, second game without him. But I don't know. There's something good going on at that football club. I thought for a little while. They haven't started their European journey yet, which I think might affect them as the season goes on. But it's not going to affect them now. And like I said on podcasts prior, I think Sunderland are going to be a home team. I think they're going to rely heavily on their home form. We've seen already this season they've beaten two, solid sort of established Premier League teams at home and struggled against a newly promoted team away. So I think it could go similar to that game, to be honest. I think Palace might have a bit too much for them at Selhurst Park. And I think any Sunderland supporter would take a draw if they were offered it before the game. So, yeah, I think they'll just have too much for them. I've gone 2-0 to Crystal Palace.
So I've gone 2-1. I've got the game going a bit closer. I do think Sunderland have started incredibly well. There was obviously that blip against Burnley, but much like what you were saying, I think they're going to be heavily reliant on the home form and relying on the supporters, Connor's pet here, to kind of help them to pull them over the line. I do think that Palace have started really well as well. So I think, for all they've lost a player of Eze's talent, they've still got enough about them. And I think, I know I mentioned it in the last pod, keeping a hold of Gahey for all, potentially is going to be detrimental going forward in terms of a transfer fee. I think that's a big thing for them defensively. He's a rock at the back for them. And I know Glasner was really upset at the thought of losing both him and Eze. So I think he'll be really pleased that he's managed to keep hold of him kind of by default. But I think that'll be a big difference maker for Palace. They are very defensively solid, and the Mateta up top is an absolute animal. So yeah, I do think they'll probably just have a bit too much at home to Sunderland. So yeah, I've gone 2-1.
Yep, so that moves us on to another newly promoted side in Leeds. They're away at the Craven Cottage on Saturday at Fulham. Anth, how you got this game going?
So I've gone for 1-0. I think the games that we've seen Leeds have been quite tight affairs. So I do think it's probably only going to be a goal in it. Really, I don't really see. I know Fulham were able to rescue a draw back against Brighton, and I think they've just got that little bit about them that will just edge the game. So yeah, I've gone for Fulham to win that.
Yeah, I echo. Yeah, I've gone 1-0 as well to Fulham. I'm just not impressed. And I know it's not a very, nice thing to say, and I know Leeds fans will be struggling to hear that, but I'm just not impressed. Things could change, they could click. They're just not scoring goals. They worry me. They do. They've scored one goal, which was a penalty, which should never have been, in my opinion. So yeah, it's I just worry for them. I think Ellen Road against Fulham, I might think that, as you touched on before, the crowd could pull them through, but at Craven Cottage, I don't know. I just don't think they've got enough about them. I'll be honest. Going forward, and I think defensively, they're all right. Going forward, I look at them and I really, really worry. Then they're going to need an informed Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and they're going to need him fit. And he's going to have to score a lot of goals because I don't see where the other goals are coming from that team. Dan James, Willie Nonto, these aren't players with big scoring records, especially not the Premier League. So yeah, it worries us. So yeah, I've gone 1-0 to Fulham. So that brings us on next to West Ham against Tottenham. Another interesting one because we all had West Ham dead a couple of weeks ago. I don't think anybody gave them a hope in hell's chance this season, but well, after conceding 8 goals in the first 2 games and really not looking very good at all, and Graham Potter already being under pressure, and then they're going shock everybody with that fantastic 3-0 win away at Nottingham Forest. I've gone for a draw in this game. I think it'll be 1-1. And the reason why I've gone for a draw is I just think that result a couple of weeks ago might just give them that bit of confidence to go and get a result. I don't think they're good enough to beat Spurs, but I do think that they've got enough about them to maybe get a draw. And they've still got quality in that team. Let's not forget Jared Bowen, Paqueta. They've still got excellent footballers there. So, yeah, I don't think it's a given that Spurs go there and win, whereas maybe 2 weeks ago I would have said different. But yeah, I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
So yeah, I've gone for a Spurs win. I can't overlook the fact that, you know, West Ham's come into the season and they've been really quite poor. I do think, you know, the result there 2 weeks ago was a big result for them, and I don't know whether that was part of what was going on in the background at Forest had an effect on what happened on the pitch. Is that an excuse? Probably, but I'm not entirely sure that West Ham have enough to beat Spurs, and I think Spurs will want to bounce back from the previous week as well. So yeah, I think Spurs will win this one 3-1.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one again. I'm quite looking forward to that game. So next we have Brentford against Chelsea at Brentford. Again, Brentford not the best of starts to the season. I really don't know what to make of them, to be honest with you. Yeah, I still feel like they've lost too many key components from that team that they've had set up for a few years, and I think they're going to struggle. So I've gone for a 3-0 win to Chelsea. I just think Chelsea have far too much for them. How do you see this one going on?
Yeah, I've gone for a Chelsea 3-0 win as well. I think, you know, the standout so far. You'd probably argue Norgard is been good for them. No, sorry, Damsgaard. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Damsgaard.
no
Sorry,
God went to Arsenal.
Norgard's gone to Arsenal. Yeah, Damsgaard's been a standout, and so is Ouattara. I don't think they'll be able to pick Chelsea apart the way that they have done, and I just think I kind of see past Chelsea, unfortunately, and I think it's a hard game for Brentford to go into. For all their home form, it was pretty good last season, and there was lots of goals. But the two main goal scorers are no longer there, and I think it's going to be a difficult game for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Thiago as well. He's looked impressive. The striker, he's looked all right as well this season. But yeah, I agree. I just think that they're not impressing all that. Not enough for you to back them at home against Chelsea. So yeah. The last one we're going to talk about in great detail is Burnley against Liverpool. So Burnley obviously won their first home game of the season against Sunderland. They have had a tricky start to the season. I'm pretty sure. Do they play Man City after this? I think they might play Man City after Liverpool as well. So getting the big boys out the way pretty quickly. But yeah, they've had a tough start of the season. Spurs away, obviously Sunderland at home, but then now Liverpool as well, and Man United away as well. So yeah, it's been a sticky start for Burnley. I've gone for a 2-1 win for Liverpool. I don't know what Liverpool's forward line's going to look like. I know we're not supposed to go into detail, but this is why I've done it. I'm guessing Ekitike probably gets a start. I don't think Isak will be ready yet. So Sorry, he who shall not be named. Sorry. But yeah, I'm not sure if he gets a start, but I still think, Ekitike looks like he's on fire, and I just don't think Burnley will be able to cope with that. I do think though, at Turf Moor, it's a nice compact stadium, and the crowd, it does get noisy in there. It's one of them sort of intimidating grounds at times, and I think their backs will be up. They know they need a result. So I think it'll be an interesting one. And let's not forget, Burnley and Liverpool aren't that far away from each other. So, it's maybe it's got a bit of spice as well. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've gone for a 2-1 Liverpool win.
I'm just looking at our forward line at Liverpool, and I've gone 4-0. I think it's going to be a hard day at the office for Burnley, unfortunately. It's quite frightening, that front line that they've got now. I know we don't talk about the big six, but that is a scary side for anybody to face. Never mind if you're a newly promoted side. So I do think it's going to be a very tough day at the office for Burnley. If they come out with anything, I'll be very impressed, very highly impressed.
Yeah, and to quickly touch on the last game of the weekend, two teams that we don't talk about on this podcast. It's the Manchester Derby, Manchester City against Manchester United. I've gone for a 0-0 draw because I think they're both at the start of this season as hopeless as each other. City 2 defeats, Man United 4 points on the board. They did get that fluky win against Burnley, but yeah, I've gone for a 0-0 draw. And how do you see? What's your prediction on this one?
I've gone for City to win 3-1.
Yep. As simple as that. Well, that's what we are. Lovely. Right. Well, that sees us up then. Thank you very much for listening. I think Connor is going to add his predictions on. Well, he said he was going to add his predictions on. So thank you very much. And we shall see you next time.